Right. Hey guys, welcome to this live session by Scalar Academy. Now, before I start off, could you guys give me a quick confirmation if you can hear me properly and see me properly? Can I get a thumbs up from everyone in the chat? Right. So I'll also check from my side as well if everything is proper. Right. So seems that the sound is working. Could I get a confirmation from everyone, please? That would be quite helpful. Probably I'll wait for a minute or two for more folks to join in. And in the meanwhile, I'll just set the context for today's session. So, in this particular session, what we'll do is we'll be implementing simple exploratory data analysis. And for this purpose, we'll be using two languages. One is known as Python, and the other language is known as R. And both of these languages are widely used whenever you'd have to perform any sort of data analytical or data science tasks. So probably we'll start off with projects related to R programming. And what we'll do is there are some inbuilt data sets in our studio, and we'll start off with that. So we'll perform data munging and also we'll perform certain visualization. Right. So if the agenda is clear, what we'll do is we can go ahead and start off with today's session. Um, right. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Right, guys. So again, if you could give me a confirmation, if you can see the screen over here, that would be quite helpful. Right, so seems that it is visible over here. And also I'd want the session to be quite interactive. So if you have any questions, any feedback, any suggestions, you can put them up in the chat window. I will parallelly take them up. Right. Chinma says yes. Savi is asking, will this session help me for building my portfolio? So Savi, you would have to elaborate the question a bit more. So when you say portfolio, what exactly are you looking at? If you're looking at probably data, I mean, if you'd want to apply for data analyst roles, then yes, this will sort of help you in brushing up your data analytical skills. Right. So are we saying looking forward to data analyst role? Yes, definitely. So Pure will be using R and Python and will be performing some data munging and data visualization. Right. As said, you can keep putting up your questions and suggestions over here in the chat, and I shall parallelly take them up. So, folks, what you see right now over here is known as R Studio, and this is the ID which we use for our programming language. And now, if you have worked with other programming languages, so let's say if you work with Java, you have an ID called as Eclipse, which is very widely used with Java. Similarly, if you have worked with C++, normally you either use Dev C++ or Turbo C++. Again, if you want to work with Python, you normally use a Jupyter notebook. So similarly for R, the most widely used ID is R Studio. And as you see, you have four windows over here. This is the script window. This is the console window. This you have, you can probably look at the history of commands that you've run over here. You can import the data set and you can perform multiple options. And again, over here. So here you have the file structure or the file directory. Over here, you can look at whatever visualization you're making. Then if you'd want to install some packages, you can go ahead and do that. So this is a brief intro to this R Studio console. Now what we'll do is I will go ahead and open up a data set. Now there is a data set called as iris. So I'll write down view of iris, and this what you see over here is this data frame. Now, if I'd want more information about this, what I'll do is I'll just put in a question mark over here and I'll write down the name of the data frame, question mark iris. And you see that in this help section, I have the entire information about this iris data frame. So here it says that this famous iris dataset gives the measurements in centimeters of the variables sepal length, width, and petal length and width. So these what you see. So normally if you have a flower, so a flower has a petal, isn't it? So those top petals which you see, those are essentially petals. And then you also have something called as a sepal. So we have the length and width features of the sepal and petal of this flower called as iris. And this iris flower has three different species. And those species are Setosa, versicolor, and virginica. And this is the most widely used data set for beginners, right? So let's say if you're just a beginner in the field of data analytics, then this is the data set which majority of the folks use to perform basic data analysis, right? So now that we have looked at this, let's understand this properly. So here, as you see, showing 1 to 10 of 150 entries. So this basically means that there are 150 records in this data frame, and there are 5 different columns. And now, if I'd want to understand the structure of this, so there is something called as str. So inside this function, I'll go ahead and I'll pass in the iris object. And this is what you'll get over here. So data frame. So iris is essentially a data frame. You have 150 observations of 5 different variables, right? And these are all of the different columns which are present. Now here you'll see that the first 4 columns are of type numeric. Let me minimize this over here, right? So sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, these are of numeric type. And then you have the species column. So species is categorical. Now, if you'd want to work with categorical variables in R, there is something called as a factor. So factor, so let's say whenever you're dealing with different categories or different levels, you would have to use a new data type called as factor in R language. And that is what it is. And now this is set. What I'd want to do is I'd want to perform certain exploratory data analysis on top of this. Now what we'll do is let's perform some simple stuff. From this entire data frame, let's say if I were to extract only the petal length column, right? For that, there are multiple ways, but I'll be using the help of deployer library. Again, if you work with Python before, there is a library called as pandas, which is widely used for data manipulation. Similarly, in our programming language, you have a library called as deployer, and that is what you use for data manipulation. Let me go ahead and load that over here. I'll write down library. Inside this, I'll pass in deployer library. Now I've passed this. What I'd want to do is I'll give in the syntax first. I'll give in the name of the data frame, which is iris. I'll follow it up with something called as a pipe operator. So this symbol or this combination of symbols is known as the pipe operator. Again, this is analogous to the real world pipes which you see in daily life, isn't it? Right? So you can connect multiple pipes together to join different objects, isn't it? So let's say if I want to join something at that end of the room to something which is at the right end of the room, I can just use multiple pipes and keep connecting those. And that's us what we're using over here. Now, what I want to do is I want to connect this iris data frame with the select function. So here you see deployer. So this select function is a part of the deployer package. And what I'm doing is on top of this iris data frame, I am using this select function and I'm joining these using the pipe operator. And from this iris data frame, I'd want to extract the petal length column. So here I'll give in double quotes and I'll write down petal dot length. Now let me go ahead and store this in a new object. So I'll call this as iris underscore pl. I'll have view iris underscore pl, and this is what I get. So this is my original data frame, and from this original data frame, all I've done is I've written a simple line of code over here. And with this simple line of code, I was able to extract the petal length column. Similarly, let's say if I'd want to extract the sepal length column, the command would pretty much be the same. So here I shall write down iris, then I shall have the pipe operator. Again, I'll use the select function. Now inside the select function, I will give in the name of the column here. So the name of the column would be sepal.length, and then I would want to store this in a new object. So I'll call that new object as iris underscore sl. I'll hit enter. Now I'll have a glance at this. So this view command which you see, this helps us to have a glance at the data frames which we've created. So view of iris underscore sl, and this is what you have. So this is our original data frame, and from this original data frame, we've been able to extract the sepal length column. Right, so till here it seems quite simple. Can I get a confirmation from everyone in the chat if you're following till here? And also there are some questions. Let me take them up. So Pratyush is asking, I had a question, ggplot2 versus Matplotlib, which is better? That's a very interesting question, Pratyush. So by default, or I'd normally say that ggplot2 is better than Matplotlib because ggplot2 is a library which was built for proper visualization. And the GG in ggplot2 stands for grammar of graphics. Now, let's say if I want to speak with someone else. So right now I'm speaking with you guys, isn't it? And if I'd have to make proper sense, then I'd have to follow some proper grammar or proper syntactical rules in English. And that is how I'm able to speak with you guys. Right? So let's say there's a sentence, Joey loves pizza. Now, Joey loves pizza, it makes proper sense because it follows grammatical rules. Now, on the other hand, let's say if I call it as Laos Joey Pizza, then that doesn't really make much sense. So, if you make a sentence such as Laos Joey Pizza, this is not following the grammatical rules. So, similarly, visualization is also a form of communication. And if I'd want to create a beautiful visualization, then you'd have to follow something called as grammar of graphics. And ggplot2 is a library which is built on top of grammar of graphics or using grammar of graphics. So what you have is you have different layers and you can map multiple layers on top of each other. And this helps visualization much more easier and much more beautiful when it comes to ggplot2. Right, so the simple answer would be yes, ggplot2 is a better visualization library when compared to Matplotlib. Right. Let me see if there are more questions over here. Mithun is asking what is the difference between data analytics and data science roles? Right. Again, a very interesting question. And this is a question which most freshers have in the data science field or the analytics field. Because normally when you're applying for these roles, these seem very vague. But the single distinguishing factor would be if you are working as a data analyst or maybe a business analyst, what you'll be doing is exploratory data analysis mostly, right? So right now what we are doing is EDA, which is short for exploratory data analysis. And as a data analyst or a business analyst, you'll be performing EDA tasks and you'll be finding out meaningful information from your raw data which you have. So you'll basically be performing pre-processing on your raw data. Now, on the other hand, what a data scientist does is a data scientist role would probably involve a bit of forecasting as well, would involve working with ML algorithms, right? So this person has to find out information which actually does not exist. So this is what differentiates a data analyst and a data scientist. Right? So a data analyst or a data scientist works with tools such as Python and R, and maybe a couple of BI tools such as Tableau and Power BI. But a data scientist needs to have proper understanding of all your ML algorithms and also needs to have a good fundamental knowledge of mathematics and stats. Right? So depending on this, you can choose whatever field you want to get into. Right. So folks, you can keep putting up your questions in the chat. I'll take them up parallelly. Now, what we've done is we've extracted two columns over here. Now, if I'd want to select multiple columns from this, so let's say I'd want to extract the sepal length column, the petal length column, and the species column from this entire data frame. Let's see how can we do that. Right. So again, the same, you'd have to follow the same procedure. First, you need to give in the name of the data frame, which is iris. Then you give in the pipe operator over here. Now, after giving the pipe operator, I will use the select function, and inside the select function, I'll give in all of the columns which I want. So the first column would be sepal dot length. The next column would be petal dot length, and the final column which I want is species. And thus I can go ahead and store an iris len species view of iris len species, and this is what I get, right? So this is our original data frame, and from this I've been able to extract only 3 columns. All right, so this is set. We've worked with the select column, and now if I'd want to extract records on the basis of a particular condition, right? So let's say if from this entire data frame I'd want only those records where the sepal length value is greater than 5. Right? So this is the problem statement. From this entire data frame, I'd want only those records where the sepal length value is greater than 5. So for this, I'll write down iris. Then I'll use the pipe operator. This time I'll be using the filter function. The filter function again is part of the dplyr package or the dplyr library. And with the help of this, we can extract records on the basis of a single condition or multiple conditions. So this time, the condition would be sepal length is greater than 5. So from this iris data frame, I'm extracting all the records where the value of sepal length is greater than 5. And I'll go ahead and store in, let's say, SL5. I'll have view of SL5. And when I have a glance at this, now if you look at this particular column, the first column over here, you will see that all the values are greater than 5, right? 5.1, 5.4, and so on, right? Now if I scroll down, again, you will see all the values greater than 5. That is because we've extracted only those records where this condition is satisfied. Now, if you look at this, there are 150 entries in total. And if you look at this, there are 118 entries in total, which would mean that out of the 150 records, there are 118 entries where the sepal length value is greater than 5. If I want to find out the percentage, I can just divide 118 by 150, I'll get 0.78. It should mean that 78% of the records in this iris data frame have their sepal length value greater than 78%. Right, so these are the sort of analytical tasks you will normally do. Right, so this is a very simple example. Again, from this entire data frame, let's say if I were to extract all those records where the petal length value is greater than 2, right? Again, I'll write down iris, and now I need to give in the pipe operator. I need to give in the filter method over here, and then the condition would be petal dot width is greater than 2. Or let's actually make it 3. Let's see if we have any record satisfying this condition. And I'll call this as PW3. View of PW3. Seems like there are no records over here. Let me change this a bit, right? So here I'll modify this. I'll have petal dot width greater than 2, and I'll store this in an object called as PW2. Now I'll have view of PW2. Here, if you look at this over here, you have all of these records where the value of petal width is greater than 2, right? So it seems that from all the records, probably the maximum value would be around 2.5, I guess, isn't it? Right? So you don't have any records where the petal width value is greater than 3. And the maximum value of petal width would be around 2.4 or 2.5. And here again, from this entire data frame, there are 150 records. From those 150 records, there are only 23 records where the petal width value is greater than 2. Now here, if I divide 23 by 150, I'll get 0.15, which is 15%. So there are 15% of the records in this data frame, their petal width value is greater than 2. Again, if I'd want maybe a composition of, let's say, so here you see that there are sepal length values which are greater than 7, and there are petal width values greater than 2. If I want both of these conditions to be satisfied, I can use this as well. So I'll have iris, I'll use the filter method. I'll need filter, not file. I can give in multiple conditions. So the first condition would be sepal length is greater than, I'll call it 7. I'll use the AND operator. Then I'll give in the next condition, which is petal, let's call this width. Petal width needs to be greater than 2. This I'll store in, let's say, iris new. Let's just call this iris new. That's fine. I'll have view of iris new, and you see over here there are 6 records. So out of the 150 records, there are only 6 records where the sepal length value is greater than 7 and the petal width value is greater than 2. So this is the sort of analysis, again, which we've performed over here. Let me head back to the chat, see if there are any more questions. Next one is asking, is iris dataset inbuilt in RStudio? Yes. So you don't have to load it manually. So this is a dataset which you will find inbuilt in RStudio, right? So you don't have to load a package or library or anything like that. All you have to do is, let me close this. All you have to do is use the view method and write down iris, and it will, the iris dataset will present itself to you folks. Right? It's that simple. And again, if you want to find more information about this, all you can do is put in a question mark and follow it up with the name of the data frame. So question mark iris, as you see, I have the entire information of this. Right. Let me check if there are more questions over here. Priya is asking, for EDA, should I prefer Python or R? Um, so this is a twofold answer. When you say Python or R, both of them have their own uses. And let's talk about R first. So R is a language which was developed by statisticians for statisticians, right? So it's mostly academicians who use R, or you can call them academicians, or maybe PhD students or PhD scholars. These are the folks who use R generally. And also, R, again, since it is a language which was developed by statisticians, so if you want to perform any sort of statistical analysis, right, then R should be a go-to language. And also, if it comes to EDA, then R is a really good language over here. When it comes to Python, Python is a very versatile language. So you can perform, I mean, you can have game development, you can have you can create websites with Python, and also you can have machine learning and AI applications with Python. But in the industry, Python is used more than R because, let's say, you can take it this way. So let's say if you want to have quick prototypes or quick results, that is when you use R. Or maybe if it's more of academic purpose, that is when you use R. But then again, let's say if you'd want to implement ML tasks or deep learning tasks, then you go ahead and work with Python, right? If it's EDA, and maybe I'll put it this way again, in EDA, if it's visualization, then I am someone who would prefer R over Python because I personally love working with ggplot2, right? It's much more easier, and the visualization is also pretty better when compared to Matplotlib. Similarly, also I find the dplyr package to be much more simpler to work with when compared to the pandas. But in the industry, it is Python, which is being widely used. And whatever companies are currently using R out there, they are gradually shifting to Python. So hopefully that answers your question. Anubhav was asking, can you share the link of website? Which website are you talking about? Anubhav is asking, where can we get the dataset? So again, Anubhav, Iris is an inbuilt dataset. You don't have to take it from anywhere. All you have to do is type in view of Iris, you'll get it. Right. So keep putting up your questions. I'll take them up in a while. And also, folks, if you haven't yet liked the video, please do click on the like button. And if you're new to our channel and haven't subscribed to our channel yet, do click on the subscribe button as well. Right. So please do that. That will help us a lot. Right. So this is set. Now, after this, what I'd want to do is I'd want to perform a bit of visualization. And now I'll show you why visualization with R is really good. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a scatter plot. For this, I would need a library called as ggplot2. So I'll have library of ggplot2. I've loaded this. And that scatter plot I'll build between sepal length and petal length. So here, I need to write ggplot. And inside this, onto the data layers, as I've said, ggplot2 is based on grammar of graphics, and you can stack one layer on top of other. So at the bottom, we have the data layer, and onto the data layer, we just map whatever data set we are working with. So I'm working with the iris data set. So I'll map iris onto the data layer. Then we have something called as a geometry. So I'll have geom, or before this, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and have something called as the aesthetic layer as well. Right? So we have the data set ready. And now from this data set, I'd want to map some columns onto certain aesthetics or onto certain metrics. And since I'd want to make a scatter plot, so a scatter plot over here would be two-dimensional. I'll have something on the x-axis, I'll have something on the y-axis. So this time what I'll do is onto the x-axis, I'll map in sepal length, and onto the y-axis, I'll map in petal length. Right? So on top of the data layer, I've stacked the aesthetic layer. So aesthetic layer, you can just consider that I can map in whatever columns or attributes I have onto the different aesthetics over here. This is set. Then I can go ahead and add the geometry layer. So geometry layer is basically the plot which you'd want to make. I don't want to make a scatter plot, so I'll have geom point. This is ready. I'll hit enter. So here L has to be capital. Let me change that. Let me keep it capital L. Let me hit enter. Right. And here you will see the beautiful visualization over here. Let me also zoom this for you guys. Right. So this is what you see. At the bottom, we have sepal length. On the y-axis, we have petal length. And if you look at this, this is sort of a linear relationship between petal length and sepal length, isn't it? Which would mean that as the values of sepal length increases, the values of petal length would also increase, right? Let me close this over here. Now, I'd want to add certain colors to this, right? You see these three different species over here. We have Setosa versicolor and Virginica. I'd want to segregate these points or these dots with the help of the species column. Now, then it is very, very easy when you're working with ggplot2, right? So I have the X aesthetic, I have the Y aesthetic. After this, what I'll do is I'll have the color aesthetic as well. So onto the color aesthetic, I will map the species column. So let me write down species. And now when I hit enter, you will see that these points have been assigned a color, and that color is on the basis of the species column. So these pink colored dots or the maroon colored dots you see over here, the color is because of the, so here that indicates all of the records where the species is Setosa. All of these green colored dots are where the species is versicolor, and all of the blue colored dots are where the species is virginica. Now, if I want to analyze this, let me again zoom this over here. If I were to analyze this, you will see that all the Virginica species, it would seem that when you compare Virginica with versicolor and Setosa, it seems that Virginica would have the highest sepal length and petal length, right? You see these blue colored dots. When compared to sepal length, they are at the right side or to the rightmost side. Similarly, when you compare with the petal length, again, the blue dots at the top or top side over here, right? This would mean that the Virginica species would have the highest sepal length and petal length. Similarly, you have this Setosa species over here lurking down at the bottom. So the Setosa species would have the lowest sepal length and the lowest petal length. Again, if you look at this graph, it becomes very easy to understand the pattern over here. And as I say, a picture speaks more than 1,000 words, right? All I have to do is look at this graph and I'll easily know more information about these different species over here. Right, and also if you look at the aesthetics of this graph or the or how the graph has been made, it is very easy over here, right? And that is why ggplot2 is a library which is preferred by a lot of data analysts, right? So this is set. Now similarly, let's say if I want to understand the distribution of a single column, so I have sepal length, sepal width, and petal length, so on. Now if I were to only understand the distribution of the sepal length column, so for this, I can make a histogram. What I'll do is, again, I'll write down GG plot over here onto the data layer. Let me go ahead and map the iris data set. Now, after this, again, onto the aesthetic layer, this time onto the x-axis, I will map the sepal length column. So data is iris, and onto the x-axis, I'm mapping the sepal length column. Then going ahead, I'd want to make a histogram. So I'll use geom histogram and I will hit enter. And this is what you see over here, right? So this is the histogram which we get, and it would seem that, so there are 150 records, isn't it? Out of those 150 records, you would see that, so this graph you see, or this bin which you see, so it would seem that there are around 11 records, right? And this is the maximum frequency over here. So this would be around 11 or 12 maybe. So there are 11 or 12 records where the sepal length value would be around 6.5, right? Again, this value would be around 8. So there would be around 8 records where the value is close to 6.5. Similarly here, so this would mean 1, I believe. So there is only one record where the sepal length value is 8 or maybe close to 8. Again, here, if you look at this side, so if you look at this particular bar over here, so there would be around 3 or 4 records maybe where the sepal length value would be 4 or 5, if I'm not wrong, right? So this is the sort of information which you can get from this graph. Again, if I were to add color to this, it is very simple. So in geom histogram, I'll use something called as fill. Now here, this is a fill color, right? When we were working with scatter plot, those were dots. And you can't really fill something inside a dot, so that is why you just give a boundary color to that. But when it comes to a histogram, you can give a fill color inside this. So for this fill color, let's say I given there is something called as pale green 4. Let me just give in pale green 4 over here. I'll hit enter, and this is what you get. And you see that this is a really beautiful graph over here. Right. This is said. Let me go back to the chat and see if there are more questions. Karthik is asking, what about Tableau for data visualization? Yes. Now, again, Tableau, you have to understand that that is a BI tool. Now, here we are using, so ggplot2 is not a BI tool, it's a visualization library, which is part of the R language. And again, Tableau is, it's much more efficient. And also the graphs or the dashboards which you create with Tableau are at are at far superiority level when compared to graphs which you create with Python or R, right? Because you need to understand that Tableau is specifically built for that purpose, right? Tableau is specifically built for creating dashboards, for finding insights from the raw data by creating dashboards and creating stunning visualizations. Now, R visualization is only one component. Similarly, Python visualization is only one component of that. So obviously, when you compare Tableau with R and Python, Tableau is hands down the winner over there. Right. Karthik has a question again. Could you tell us a few tools you can use for data analysis? Right. So again, tools for data analysis. Normally, the widely used languages would be R and Python. And again, in the industry, it is mostly Python, and also the companies which are using R, they are shifting to Python. But if it's academia, right? So let's say if you are a research scholar, or maybe a research student, or maybe a PhD student, right? Or maybe you're doing something related to academia, then R is more preferred. And now, if we talk about other tools, so again, there is SAS. SAS is also another language which is widely used in the industry. Then you have BI tools. So again, you have Tableau, you have Power BI, you have Microsoft BI, and so on. And so these are essentially the tools which you can use for performing data analytics tasks. So this is set. Now, again, what I do want to do is, so we've looked at EDA with R. I want to also perform EDA with Python. So let me go ahead and open up Jupyter Notebook now. Right. So this guy says Jupyter Notebook. Let me change the name over here. I'll write down EDA with Python. I'll rename this. Let me increase the size of this or set the size of this properly. Right. Again, could I get a quick confirmation if you can see the Jupyter Notebook over here? Can I get a quick confirmation from everyone, please? That would be helpful. Right. Now here, what I'd want to do is, probably I'll work with a data set. So here I have multiple data sets. Let me just show that to you over here. I have something called as, so there's a data set called as covidindia.csv. Let me open it up over here. And this is what I have. And this is the data set I'll be working with over here. covidindia.csv. Now for this, in Python, you have a library called as pandas. Let me go ahead and open that or import that. I'll write down import pandas as pt. I'll hit on run. Right, so this library we've loaded. Now I'd want to load the file. So I'll have pd.read_csv. Inside this, I need to give in the name of the file. So the name of the file would be covidindia.csv. Again, you need to give in this extension over here because this is a CSV file, right? Because we are reading a CSV file. So pd.read_csv. I'm loading this, and let me go ahead and store this in a new object. I'll call that object as COVID. This is set. Now I'd want to have a glance at the first five records of this data frame. For that, I have a method or a function called as head. So I'll have COVID dot head, and I'll run this, and you will see these are the different columns which are present. And by default, the head method would give you five records. Now let's say instead of five records, I'd want to have a glance at the first 10 records. I'll write down 10 over here, right? You will see 10 records over here. Similarly, if I were to have a glance at 15 records, let me change that to 15. I'll have 15. Right, so this is totally up to you. By default, it'll give you five records, and that is more than enough to understand what sort of data you have in this particular CSV file or data frame. Right. And also the terminology is same in both Python and R, right? In R also, this is called as a data frame, and in Python also, this is called as a data frame. And in R, you normally work with the deploy library for performing data manipulation. And in Python, you normally use pandas for this, right? So we have all of these different columns over here. So this is the date at which, at which a certain person was detected to have COVID-19 symptoms. You have the time, you have the state, you have whether this person was Indian or maybe a foreign national, and you have on this date the number of deaths or the number of cured. So this is essentially the data. Similarly, if I were to use COVID dot tail over here instead of COVID dot dead, look at the difference in dates over here, right? So here you will see that the first date was around 30th of January 2020. Right, so it seems that it was 30th of January 2020 when the first case in India was confirmed, and that was in Kerala. Right, so 30th January 2020, you had one confirmed case. Now, this data set is only limited to June of 2021, right? So this is only limited to 24th June 2021. And as of 24th June 2021, in West Bengal, you had this is for 14 lakhs, if I'm not wrong. So 14 lakhs 87,363 cases. Now that is a whopping number of confirmed cases, isn't it? Right. So this is a span of 1.5 year, right? So 30th January, we had our first confirmed case in Kerala. And again, so here on 24th June, you have these different states, and across these different states, you have the number of confirmed cases. And again, what we are doing is analyzing this data, trying to find out some insights from this raw data. And that is what a data analyst or a business analyst does. Right. So we've looked at this. Now, again, I'd want to make this data a bit more pretty. So there are a lot of columns which I don't really require in this. I can just go ahead and remove them. What I'll do is I'll just write down COVID, and from this, I'll list down only the columns that I'll need. So I will need the date column. I will need the state slash union territory column. Going ahead, I would need the cured column. Then I'll need the deaths column. And then I will need the confirmed column over here. Let me go ahead and store this back to COVID. So what I'm doing is, this is my original data frame. From this original data frame, I'm selecting only these columns, which are date, state slash union territory, cured or the number of cured cases, number of death cases, number of confirmed cases. Let me execute this. So this is set. Now I will have COVID.head. And if I look at this modified data frame over here, you will see that I only have these columns. So I started from this huge data frame where I had a lot of columns. From them, I only selected columns that I need. Let me just go ahead and cut these out over here so that I'll have more space. Let me cut this as well. Let me cut this as well. Right. So this is how my subset of the original data frame looks like. So now that I have the subset over here, I can perform multiple things on this. Now, again, before starting with the ADA, let's do some pre-processing again. Now, whenever we are performing EDA, normally it's better to, so you see these column names over here, it's better to have them very simple, right? And the first step, normally what we do is whenever you have it in title case or whenever you have the starting letter of your column name to be capital, we change it to small letter because when we are performing EDA, we normally get confused, right? And it's easy to keep all of your column names in small case. It's much more easier for analysis. And also, let's say state slash union territory, I can just keep it as state. Again, simpler to understand this. So for this, what I'll do is I'll write down COVID. I have something called as rename. So I'll have COVID, or before this, what I'll do is maybe COVID dot rename. I'll have this over here. I'll have date, and let me keep it as date. Let me see what happens. So it seems like this is not working. Um, or maybe I'll have df dot rename over here, right? PD. Let me write down COVID over here. I'll have rename. Probably instead of rename, maybe I can try something else. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just keep it as it is, and we'll start off with the exploratory data analysis. So here we have this set. So what I'll do is probably I'll extract only those records where the state is, let's see, let's start with the Telangana state. So what I'd want to do is from this entire data frame, I'd want to extract only those records where the state or union territory is equal to Telangana. So I've written down COVID over here. From this, I need to give in the condition. So the condition would be, let me write down the condition over here first. So the condition would be state slash union territory, and let me cut this, let me paste this over here, and let me put this inside double quotes, right? State slash union territory. Now what I'd want is, so this needs to be condition. So here the state slash union territory here, this needs to be equal to let's say this needs to be equal to Telangana. So I'll just write down Telangana over here. Now, when I execute this, you'll see a bunch of false and true values. Now, what does this exactly mean? So wherever you have the false result, it would mean that this condition is not satisfied. Wherever you have the true result, it would mean that this condition is satisfied. So you see this record number or index number 16377. So you'll have a record where the state or union territory is equal to Telangana over there. Now I have this bunch of false and true values. From this, what I'd want is, I want the actual records. So I'll cut this entire thing. I'll paste this inside the original data frame, and now I'll hit enter. Now when I hit enter, you shall see that I have extracted only those records where the state slash union territory is equal to Telangana. Right? And this, I'll go ahead and store it in a new object. Let me call this as Telangana over here. I'll hit enter. Now I'll have Telangana dot head. Right? So now I'm looking at only those records where the state slash union territory is equal to Telangana. Here again, what you're seeing is this is 2nd of February 2021. And as of 2nd Feb 2021, there are 45,000 or 4,50,000 confirmed cases. Right? Again, if I were to use tail over here, Telangana dot tail, so this is 24th of June 2020. And as of 24th of June, you have 61 lakhs, or this is 6 lakhs, this is 6 lakhs 16,688 cases. Right, so this is interesting information over here. And now, what I'll want is, I'd want to look at the top 5 states with maximum number of confirmed cases. So, and also I'd want that as of today. For that, you see the last date, again, last date would be 24 June 2021. So what I'll do is I'll write down COVID over here. Inside this, I'll give in the column name. The column name is date, and the condition would be date needs to be equal to, and again, mind you, this is of type string. right? So we haven't yet converted this to date time format. This is still a string, and that is why I'm giving this inside double quotes. So date is equal to 2021 hyphen 06 hyphen 24. I'll hit enter. You have a bunch of false and true values. Again, I'll have COVID over here. Let me put on this braces properly. I'll cut this out. I'll paste this inside this. I'll hit an enter, right? So here, this is the last date in this record for which I have information about all of the different states. So as of 24 June 2021, in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, there were 7,438 cases. That's understandable because the land size and the habitat of Andaman and Nicobar Islands is quite small. Then you have Andhra Pradesh. Here it seems that there are 18 lakh cases, which is a whopping amount. Then you have Bihar. It would seem that there are 7 lakhs cases, 7 lakh 20,000. Again, you have Goa. It seems that there are 1 lakh 65,000 cases and so on. And now I'd want to store this in something called as, let's call this as state cases. Then I'll have state cases dot head, and this is what I have. Now from this, I'll want to sort this in descending order because I'd want the state with maximum number of confirmed cases at the top and the state with least number of confirmed cases at the bottom. So here again, instead of using head, I'll have state cases dot sort values. After this, I'll set maybe, let me write down ascending is equal to false and I'll hit enter. I need to use a column which would be by is equal to, because I need to give a column by which I'm sorting. So by needs to be equal to confirmed and then ascending is equal to false. Key error confirmed. So I need to give the name properly over here. So confirmed and I hit enter and this is what I get. Right, so as of 24th June 2021, it is Maharashtra, where you will find the maximum number of confirmed cases. So you have 59,97,000 confirmed cases in Maharashtra. Then you have Kerala. So you see the whopping difference again over here. So it's almost double or more than double over here, if I'm not wrong, right? So as of 24th June 2021, so Maharashtra is leading the way by a huge margin in terms of confirmed cases, deaths, and even cured cases as well, because obviously the confirmed cases are a lot. Then you have Kerala, then you have Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and then Andhra Pradesh in the fifth position. So what I'd want is, I'd want to make a bar plot for this. So again, what I'll do is, I'll only take the top 5 records, and if I want only the top 5 records, I'll take head. Let me store this in top 5 states. I'll hit enter. Now let me print in top 5 states for you guys, and this is what we get. Again, let me clear this entire thing over here for you guys. Right, so top 5 states, and this is what we have: Maharashtra to Andhra Pradesh. Now I'd want to make a bar plot for this. Now in Python, we have two libraries for visualization. One is ggplot, one is Matplotlib, then we have Seaborn. So here I shall be using Seaborn for this. So what I'll do is, I'll write down import, let me change this actually. I'll have from Matplotlib import pyplot as plt. Then let me also import Seaborn. So I'll write down import Seaborn as SNS. So I've imported two libraries over here. Now after this, what I'd want to do is I'd want to make a bar plot. So I'll write down SNS dot bar plot over here. So again, I'm not exactly sure if this is the exact method over here. So I have SNS dot bar plot. I need to map something on the x-axis and something on the y-axis. So on the x-axis, I'd want to map the state slash union territory column, And on the y-axis, I'd want to map the confirmed column. And obviously, both of these are coming from the top 5 states object. So data would be equal to top 5 states. Bar plot doesn't exist. Let me remove this hyphen over here. Now let me try it out. Right. And this is what we get. Right. So this is again a bar plot which we have. Let me zoom into this and show you guys what is happening. Right. So clearly, if you look at the size of the bar over here and here, Maharashtra clearly leading the way in terms of confirmed cases. Then you have Kerala, then you have Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. So this is how again you can perform EDA with Python on top of a data set. Right. Again, let me head back to the chat, see if there are any more questions. Right. So don't see any more questions over here. Right. So what we'll do is probably we'll end the session over here. We've looked at basic EDA with the help of R and Python. And again, if you have any more questions with respect to what we've done today, you can leave them in the comment section. We will definitely take them. And also, if you haven't yet liked the video, please do click on the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe as well. So thank you very much, guys, and we'll meet in the next session. Thank you, and have a great day.